welcome to Your Favourite Teacher. Today we're looking at the Power and Conflict Cluster. Alfred Lord Tennyson was tasked with writing a piece commemorating a famous charge during the Crimean War, in which a small troop of 600 cavalrymen charged into a valley surrounded by Russian cannons. This charge, unfortunately, was conducted under a misunderstood order. The cavalrymen were meant to go around the cannons and flank them, but instead charged the cannons to devastating consequences. What resulted was a poem which straddles the line between an attempt to honour the valour and heroism of brave soldiers and a critique of the leadership which led them to their demise. Mostly though, Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade is a piece meant about honour and praise for those soldiers who gave up their lives in duty to their country. In the beginning of the poem, Tennyson employs repetition in order to create a rhythm similar to the galloping of horses as he repeats half a league, half a league. The forward motion of the soldiers is also emphasised by the way that the repetition ends on the word onward, a word choice which helps keep the rhythm that the repetition has created. In fact, repetition is used throughout the poem, often in the beginning of stanzas for the same effect, trying to recreate the constant forward motion of the soldiers about whom the poem is written. In the first stanza, another important component of the poem's repetition is seen, where he describes the soldiers riding into the valley with a metaphor calling it the Valley of Death. However, this metaphor is more than just used to create connotations of danger which the soldiers face. This is a biblical reference which actually refers to hell and temptation which can lead one there, implying that the soldiers are not just heroic, but morally superior for their ability to face such a peril bravely. Again, in the second stanza, this image of the soldiers riding into the Valley of Death is repeated. However, with this image, there is another good example of repetition that's been used by Tennyson. The famous lines, "Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die," sums up the attitudes of the soldiers who rode into battle that day. The meaning of this is to show that the soldiers knew it was not their job to question their orders, nor was it their job to try and rationalise why this order had been given. Tennyson uses this repetition emphasised to show the mindset of the soldiers, that their duty to their country can be summarised as to do and to die, and that comes above all else. This repetition helps make it clear to readers at the time that the soldiers were heroic for their ability to stomach such difficult tasks for the good of their nation. Overall then, there's a clear emphasis on Tennyson trying to glorify these soldiers. Though there's a brief reference to the order being a mistake when he says someone had blundered, it's more important for Tennyson that these soldiers are honoured, which he aims to do in the rest of the poem. The central three stanzas describe the action of the battle. Again, he glorifies the soldiers. The repetition of cannons surrounding the soldiers in the third stanza creates an image of the peril which they faced, while the verbs volley and thundered as well as stormed are used to describe the cannons firing, which creates such an intimidating image of the enemy. The danger is also emphasised in the fourth and fifth stanza, describing the battery smoke the soldiers rode through, and then later repeating the sound of the cannon with the verbs volleyed and thundered used again. In contrast to the danger which the soldiers face, Tennyson's main aim is in fact to glorify and honour the soldiers for their bravery. Because of this goal, Tennyson employs descriptive language throughout to make the soldiers seem more gallant and heroic. For example, the soldiers rode boldly and well in the third stanza. In the fourth stanza, the soldiers plunged at their enemies and flashed all their sabres bare, implying their willingness to battle through to the bitter end. By the fifth stanza, although the soldiers must almost have been completely wiped out, Tennyson states, "They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death." The emphasis on how well the soldiers had fought here is key. Furthermore, despite the failure of the brigade's overall attempt, the fact that they came through the jaws of death implies that the soldiers have won something much greater by emphasising their victory over fear and potential danger. Ultimately, by the end of the poem, Tennyson makes his goal clear. Though he spent a lot of time describing the events in a manner which glorifies the soldiers for their efforts, the end shows Tennyson firmly stating, "When can their glory fade?" This rhetorical question in the final stanza is used to again emphasise the heroism of the Light Brigade, despite their overall failure. Similarly, Tennyson makes it clear that despite the blunder of the order with which they were given, the Light Brigade deserved to be honoured. In fact, fittingly, Tennyson ends the poem on an imperative, as if to make it clear exactly what the goal of his poem was. The final words, "Honour the charge they made, honour the Light Brigade, noble 600, making it incredibly clear what Tennyson was trying to achieve in this poem. I'm Miss Meeks, and we've been studying power and conflict.